Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 6, Chapter 9, The Appearance of Demon Vritrasura. Text number 22. Avismitam tam paripurna kamam Svenaiva labhena samam prashantam Vinopasarpatya param hi balishaha Shvalangulena titi tarti sindhum. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Translation. Free from all material conceptions of existence and never wonder-struck by anything, the Lord is always jubilant and fully satisfied by His own spiritual perfection. He has no material designations and therefore He is steady and unattached. That Supreme Personality of Godhead is the only shelter of everyone. Anyone desiring to be protected by others is certainly a great fool who desires to cross the sea by holding the tail of a dog. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. A dog can swim in the water, but if a dog dives in the ocean and someone wants to cross the ocean by holding the dog's tail, he is certainly fool number one. A dog cannot cross the ocean, nor can a person cross the ocean by catching a dog's tail. Similarly, one who desires to cross the ocean of nescience should not seek the shelter of any demigod or anyone else, but the fearless shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Srimad Bhagavatam, 10th Canto, 14th Chapter, 58th verse, therefore says, Samashhritaye padapallavaplavam mahatpadam punya yasho murarehe bhavambudhir vatsapadam param padam 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 yatvipadam natesham. The Lord's lotus feet are an indestructible boat, and if one takes shelter of that boat, he can easily cross the ocean of nescience. Consequently, there are no dangers for a devotee, although he lives within this material world which is full of dangers at every step. One should seek the shelter of the all-powerful instead of trying to be protected by one's own concocted ideas. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purport. This material world is a very strange place. Some really funny things happen, just like it is described in this chapter. What happened? Indra offended his spiritual master Brihaspati. So Brihaspati silently walked away. And Indra is without his guru. So then he searched for his guru, he could not find him. Then he went to Brahma and said, what do I do now? Brahma said, you foolish fellow, why did you offend your spiritual master? Anyway, now take another Brahmana, Vishwarupa, for performing your sacrifices. The demigods constantly have to keep performing sacrifices. Otherwise, they can lose their position. They have to maintain them, their position by doing their duty of offering sacrifices constantly to the Supreme Lord. So Indra requested Vishwarupa, another Brahmana, to help him perform his sacrifices. And Vishwarupa was doing the duty very nicely, but Vishwarupa happened to be related to the demigods from his father's side and to the demons from his mother's side. And therefore, he had some affection for both the demigods and the demons. So while performing sacrifice on behalf of Indra, Vishwarupa, he would offer oblations, idam indraya swaha, idam agnaye swaha. Loudly he would chant the mantras offering oblations to the devatas, giving them their share. But secretly, he would offer oblations to the demons also, because he had some affection for the demons. One day Indra came to know about it, and suddenly Indra became very, very angry. He is appointed by me, by the devatas, and he is secretly offering oblations to the demons, our enemies. So being afraid that the demons may anytime overpower the devatas and they may lose their position, Indra, in a fit of anger, he cut off Vishwarupa's head. He killed him, instantly killed him. And then the sinful reaction of killing a Brahmana, Brahmahatya, of all the kinds of sinful activities anybody can commit, among the topmost sinful action is killing a Brahmana. Brahmahatya. So this Brahmahatya reaction, even though Indra could have counteracted, he decided he's going to accept the reaction. So he did severe tapasya to actually become free from that reaction. And meantime, this Vishwarupa's father, Tvashta, he became very angry against Indra. My son was doing some service and some misunderstanding, and this Indra has killed my son. So he performed another sacrifice in order to create some being who will be competent to kill Indra. Because Indra is no ordinary person. It's not easy to kill Indra like that. So he performed one sacrifice. And in that sacrifice, he was chanting mantras intended to generate a person powerful enough to kill Indra. So, Indra Shatro Vivardhasva, O enemy of Indra, may you become powerful enough to be able to kill Indra. But in chanting the mantra, he made a mistake, and the mantra's meaning became enemy of Indra. No, what is that? Indra, who is an enemy. Instead of enemy of Indra, it became Indra, who is an enemy. This is Sanskrit language. It's very, very, precisely it has to be chanted. Some mistake in the chanting, the meaning can be completely opposite. And enemy of Indra changed to Indra, who is an enemy. May he become powerful. So all the mantras he was offering, so instead of empowering the creature who's going to be born powerful enough to kill Indra, he was empowering Indra, whom he intended to kill. So this sacrifice, from this sacrifice was born one demon, Vritrasura. And this Vritrasura was such a fearful demon. And everybody was afraid of this demon. And Indra decided that this demon has to be killed immediately, otherwise he will do so much of harm. But Indra's weapons were totally useless. They were not adequate for killing this Vritrasura. And then all the demigods sought shelter of Vishnu, and they offered nice prayers. So one of the prayers is here in this 22nd verse. So what is the prayer the demigods are offering? Free from all material conceptions of existence. They are glorifying the Lord. What is the Lord's position? That the Lord is free from all material conceptions of existence. Paripurna kamam. Avismitam tam paripurna kamam svenaiva labhena samam prashantam. So, even though in the Upanishads many places the Lord is described also as a person and the living entity is also a person. Both are spirit. But still, there are so many differences between the Supreme Lord and the living entity under all circumstances, in all conditions. So the differences are also pointed out in the scriptures, in the original Vedas, in the Upanishads, but the Mayavadis interpret those portions conveniently to support their Mayavada theory or philosophy. But the Vaishnavas, they don't interpret. So they take it as it is. And consequently, the Vaishnava's understanding is the living entity has got similar qualities as that of the Lord, but still there are differences, similarities and differences. And that's how Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has presented the Achintya Bheda Abheda Tattva, the philosophy of oneness and difference between the Lord and His energies, or between the Lord and the living entities, like that. So here clearly the demigods are helping us understand the position of the Lord as avismitam. He's always, he's never wonderstruck by anything. Because, on the other hand, we are subject to becoming bewildered. Material existence begins when the living entity is bewildered by the contact with material energy, by being placed in the material energy. So, due to our material conception, we are always in a bewildered state of existence in this material world. That's why if we practice spiritual life, we become free from this bewilderment gradually. We become sober. Otherwise, in a bewildered state of existence, we are unable to understand what is what in truth, in reality. Just like under the influence of illusion, being bewildered by this illusory energy, influence of illusory energy, we are considering matter to be spirit and spirit to be matter. Just the opposite. So that is the influence of illusion, and that is the bewilderment caused by our coming in contact with this illusory energy. Otherwise, in our original position as pure spirit soul, in spiritual existence, we are always able to be in an unbewildered state, in a sober state, like the Lord. But the Lord is always unbewildered, always, avismitam. And our condition is, as long as we are in spiritual existence, we are also avismitam. But when we come in contact with this material world, a material nature, when you are placed in material existence, why? Because of our desire to enjoy independently. Krishna bhuliya ji bhogavancha kare. Bhogavancha kare. So this bhogavancha, desire for independent enjoyment, is the cause of our being put into this material existence. And the immediate effect is vismitam. We become bewildered. And Lord is paripurna kamam. He is always fully satisfied by His own spiritual perfection. He is spiritually perfect and He is fully satisfied within Himself. So he doesn't seek satisfaction at any time, in any condition. And our condition, at least in material existence, is that we are always seeking two things. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna describes as pure devotees, tushyanti cha ramanti cha, fully satisfied and fully joyful, blissful, happy. Because material existence characteristic is we are not satisfied and we are not happy. So, Lord is fully satisfied and fully joyful. And our position in spiritual existence, in our original constitutional position, in relationship with the Lord as His eternal servant, is that we are also satisfied and happy completely. Like the Lord. Paripurna Kamam. He is Paripurna Kamam. Of course, that is completely, perfectly, always satisfied and happy. But we can be Purna Kama, we can be fully satisfied and fully happy in our constitutional position. But if we are forgetful of the Lord, or we are desiring independent enjoyment, we are placed in the material world, then we are always seeking that satisfaction and happiness which we lose when we come to material existence. Therefore, Krishna says, you take to devotional service and engaged in devotional service, even in the material world, you become unbewildered. Become unbewildered. And you'll be fully satisfied and happy in devotional service. Machitta madgata prana bodhayanta parasparam katayantascha mam nityam tushyanti cha ramanti cha. Srila Prabhupada says in one discourse explaining this verse, he says, everyone is seeking some satisfaction and some happiness in all their endeavors. But they can never find the happiness they are seeking or the satisfaction they are seeking in material activities. They take to devotional service. And in devotional service, one becomes completely happy and satisfied. So that is the Lord's position. Paripurna Kama. Svenaiva labhena. He is Svenaiva labhena. He is fully satisfied with his own spiritual perfection. Svenaiva labhena. His own spiritual perfection. Samam prashantam. He is always very steady and equipoised. Whereas, as tiny spirit soul, we are subject to influence. That's our position. We cannot be unaffected by the external atmosphere. So if we are in the spiritual atmosphere, then that atmosphere's influence is conducive for our well-being, for our happiness, for our satisfaction, for our fearlessness, for our being sober, etc. And when we are placed in the material existence, in the material atmosphere, the three gunas actually act on us, and first thing that happens is we become bewildered. Become bewildered, we are not equipoised, we are always affected in different ways by the three gunas, and it's always a combination of the gunas that's acting. So sometimes in sattva-guna, sometimes in rajo-guna, sometimes in tamo-guna. Different kinds of influence and bewilderment, confusion. So, material existence is always, there is no prashantam. There is no steadiness. It's always ups and downs are there in material existence. So when we take to devotional service, we are immediately uplifted above the gunas. We come to the spiritual platform. And on the spiritual platform, we become steady in our spiritual position. So the Lord is always on the spiritual platform. He never descends to the material platform, even though He comes to the material world. He comes to the material world, but He remains on the spiritual plane, in spiritual existence, eternally. Devotees, like pure devotees, even if they come to this material world, since they are always Krishna conscious, they are always in contact with Krishna, they are also always on the spiritual platform. Therefore, such pure devotees, whatever they speak, whatever they do, all their actions, all their words, all their thoughts, everything is 100% spiritual. They are always perfect in their behavior, in their character. They are unaffected by any material condition, any situation. Then, after describing these wonderful qualities of the Lord, the demigods are telling that Supreme Personality of God is the only shelter of everyone. He is the only shelter for everyone. So Prabhupada explains in one place, he's quoting Sridhar Swami, the original commentator of the Bhagavatam. Sridhar Swami, before he begins writing the commentary on the 10th canto of the Bhagavatam, he says about the 10th canto itself that the 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam reveals the 10th object, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is the shelter of all surrendered souls. There are 10 subjects in the Srimad Bhagavatam. The 10th subject is Krishna himself, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And he is described as the shelter of all surrendered souls. He is known as Sri Krishna, and he is the ultimate source of all the universes. Let me offer my obeisances unto him. So Prabhupada says this is a quotation from the Bhavartha Deepika, Sridhar Swami's commentary on Srimad Bhagavatam. In the 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, there's a description of Ashraya Tattva, Sri Krishna, and Ashrita Tattva. There are two tattvas, Ashraya Tattva and Ashrita Tattva. So Ashraya Tattva is the objective and Ashrita Tattva is the subjective. Since the lotus feet of Sri Krishna are the shelter of all devotees, Sri Krishna is also called Param Dhama. Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna addressing Krishna, he says, Param Brahma, Param Dhama. Param Dhama means Krishna's lotus feet is the shelter of everyone. Krishna is the shelter of everyone. Supreme shelter. Everything is resting under the lotus feet of Krishna. And that is described in the verse that Prabhupada quotes here, how Krishna is the shelter of everyone from the Bhagavatam. Samashrita ye pada pallava plavam mahat padam punya yasho murar. Krishna is the shelter of everyone, and the whole material existence is resting under the lotus feet of Krishna. Whole material existence. So here it is said, Under the lotus feet of Sri Krishna, the entire Mahat Tattva is existing. Mahat Tattva is existing under the lotus feet of Krishna. And that Mahat Tattva is the starting point for this creation. From Mahat Tattva, the elements get differentiated and the elements are later on combined to form this whole material world. So, since everything is under Krishna's protection, Krishna is called Ashraya Tattva. Means he is the only one who can give protection, who can give shelter. Nobody else can give shelter to anybody else. Nobody else can do that. Because we are all sheltered. We belong to a different category. Ashrita Tattva. We are sheltered. And Krishna is the shelter. So, if somebody thinks that they can take shelter of some devatas because they are also relatively more powerful than us, or they have misconception that among the devatas, different devatas have different degrees of power or different kinds of powers, so they approach different demigods for different benefits or different kinds of relief. So sometimes people worship devatas seeking their protection. But the example given here is anyone desiring to be protected by others, especially demigods, is certainly a great fool. He is described as Balishaha, is a fool, one who seeks shelter or protection by taking shelter of someone else, especially demigods. Because it's like trying to cross the sea by holding the tail of a dog. Now, why this analogy is given is, Prabhupada explains, a dog can swim in the water. Dogs don't have to learn swimming. They naturally swim when you put them in water. Even if they have never gone into water, you just throw a dog into the water, it can swim. But even if the dog can swim, it can never, if it's thrown into the middle of an ocean, it cannot swim across an ocean. That is not possible. Neither, if a dog can swim, can somebody hold the tail of the dog and expect that because the dog can swim across a small body of water. But somebody thinks that, oh, it can swim, it can save me. No. By holding the tail of a dog to cross some body of water, what to speak of crossing the ocean. It's not possible for anybody to cross the ocean like that. So, taking shelter or protection of the demigods is like that. So one should seek shelter only of the Supreme Lord, and only the Supreme Lord can actually save us from all dangers in this material existence. So this is one of Brahma's prayer, that Samashritaye pada pallava plavam. He compares the Lord's lotus feet He compares the Lord's lotus feet to an indestructible boat. If we are drowning in the middle of an ocean, then by ourselves we cannot cross the ocean. Neither by help of anybody else other than the Supreme Lord can we cross the ocean. So, we take shelter of the Lord's lotus feet, which are like an indestructible boat. And what happens if you take shelter of the Lord's lotus feet, which is like an indestructible boat? That Bhavambudhir Vatsapadam, this ocean of material existence, shrinks and becomes like the quantity of water contained in the footprint of a calf. Vatsa means calf. So the whole material existence, which is like an unlimited ocean, it shrinks to become the water contained in the footprint of a calf. And consequently, devotees, when they take shelter of the lotus feet of the Lord, they are able to cross over this ocean of material existence. They don't have to wait for the boat to take them across the ocean. They simply step across that small quantity of water. And they step across the ocean of material existence, which has become shrunk into the water-contained footprint of a calf. And they go to the other side. On one side, this material world or material existence is separated from the spiritual world by a body of water called, by a river called Viraja. Viraja. So that Viraja river, one side is this material world, other side is the spiritual world. So when the devotees cross over across this ocean of material existence, they go to the other side of the Viraja river. They enter the spiritual world. So crossing over Parampadam, they attain the spiritual kingdom of the Supreme Lord. Parampadam. And Brahma is telling the devotees are not meant to live in the material world, which is characterized by Padam Padam Yat Vipadam. There is danger in every step. Padam Padam Yat Vipadam. Our material existence, under the influence of illusion, we think, yes, material world, there are dangers, we know that. And we think sometimes there are dangers. At other times, there are moments or there are times when we are safe. There are times when there is danger and we make plans to counteract those dangers by our own methods in ignorance under the influence of illusion. But actually, the scriptures and the acharyas, they warn us, material world is not such a place that there are dangers sometimes. This material world is conducted by the three modes. And these three modes, the Sattva Guna, Rajoguna, Tamoguna, are constantly harassing the living entities who are in this material world. And symbolically, Durga Devi, she has got 10 hands and she is holding in one of the hands the Trishul, trident. That trident represents these three gunas by which we are bound up to this material world. And these three gunas are like the three prongs of the trident, with which sometimes there is a picture shown of Durga Devi killing one demon with her trident. Right? So the demon is being pierced by the three prongs of the trident. Actually, that's not just the demon alone who is in that condition, but every living entity, every conditioned soul is being afflicted with threefold miseries. Tapatraya. The 3 prongs of the trident held by Durga Devi represents the 3 kinds of kleshas which are constantly bothering us. Adibhautika, Adhyatmika, Adidaivika. Constantly there are miseries. And the foolishness of the living entity is, under the influence of illusion, sometimes the living entity thinks some misery to be actually enjoyment. There is always miseries. And we are always suffering from these miseries. But under illusion, one may think some misery to be actually enjoyment. The Shastras give one example. Just like even if a small thorn pricks your foot when you're walking barefoot, let us say. A thorn pricks your foot. Immediately you feel some pain. And then you want to remove that thorn, right? To get rid of the pain. Okay. Now this is something which is very common reaction, being, pierced by some needle or thorn or something like that. But what about people, in order to decorate themselves, let's say with an earring, they'll voluntarily go and get their ear pierced. Voluntarily go and get their ears pierced. And when that piercing is happening, oh, very nice. Actually, it is paining. Even though you may not have experience, everybody may not have experience of getting pierced by a thorn, but at least sometime when you've taken an injection, when they prick that syringe into your arm, that time, for momentarily you feel the pain, correct? So like that, even though this is painful, but this is considered painful, or the pricking of a thorn is considered painful, this is considered very nice, very pleasing. So this is foolishness actually, this is foolishness. This is the influence of illusion. Even though we are constantly suffering from miseries and even dangers, we think sometimes there is some danger to our life. But actually, the scriptures describe death itself is hanging like a sword on our neck. Any moment death can come and we have to die. And that fear of death is always there, but sometimes when there is some relief from some misery, that is wrongly interpreted as happiness. Relief from misery is interpreted as happiness. Because when there is some miserable condition, we try to counteract that misery, and that counteracting effort may give us some relief. And that relief is thought of as something very nice, very enjoyable. Just like you have stomach pain, and then you seek relief from it. And when there is, let's say, some indigestion, and that indigestion is cured by some simple digestive pill. So then you get some relief, you feel very nice. Oh, I got relief from that pain just bothering me. But how long can you rejoice that freedom from pain, that relief? For a little time. Afterwards, again you are back to the business of seeking happiness. Because your actual position in material existence is to be always in a miserable condition. To be always unhappy. To be always distressed. That is our factual position in the material world. But under the influence of illusion and due to the influence of the gunas, effect of the gunas, we think sometimes we are happy, sometimes we are unhappy, and sometimes there is a neutral state where we are not exactly unhappy, but we are seeking happiness. So therefore, in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna explains that 3 conditions of material existence. There is happiness, there is distress, and there is mixed happiness and distress. You see, these are the 3 factual conditions. And that happiness is illusory happiness, it's not real happiness. Illusory happiness. And that mixed happiness and distress is, even that illusory happiness is not exclusively that happiness, material happiness. There is no exclusive material happiness. It's always mixed happiness and distress. Mixed happiness and distress. So, in that way, this material world is described here as padam padam yat vipadam. Every step there is danger. We are always in a miserable condition. Because we make an adjustment. Being spirit soul, we are meant to be in the spiritual atmosphere where naturally we are always happy. We are always leading an eternal life full of bliss and knowledge. But material existence, actually it is not the right atmosphere for the spirit soul, this material atmosphere. So we are always uncomfortable. Just like a fish out of water. And always we are seeking to get rid of this discomfort by changing our position. But this constant changing of position, as long as we are in material world, no other place in the material world is actually a suitable place for us. It's only the spiritual world which is suitable for us. So that we learn from the authoritative or confidential scriptures. We belong to the spiritual world, and that is the only place where we can be properly situated eternally in happiness, complete satisfaction. So therefore, to transfer ourselves to our original position, get out of this material existence, is only possible by devotional service. And by devotional service it becomes easy, and it is very effective, very powerful. And that's the only way to actually get eternal happiness. I'll stop here. Antaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai.